So I got the Nothing Special Schwinn back out of storage, and we're going to do some mods to it. Now, I've been wanting to find a larger, but not the huge heavy messenger, but like a larger basket for this bike. And kind of a black one too, I think might go really well with this, but I don't know why. But I haven't really found anything to buy a new one for way too much money. I have been holding on to this little small size wall, really crappy old silver one for a while, and I think I'm just going to throw it on temporary or possibly permanently, just so I have something so I don't have to ride a messenger bag with this bike, because that's not fun. This basket's too small for Scout's little seat, so that's a drag, but I still have Scout's basket bike for now. I would like to replace that bike, possibly with this bike, pretty soon, so we will see. I have a couple other cool frames I want to do build-ups. I'm basically just going to build a bunch of upright basket bikes for myself, because maybe a single speed, maybe a 2x10, because I have a nice Tiago group, flat bar shifters. I just, buy bikes, have parts. What are you going to do? So let's do a basket mount on this. I'm going to tow in this front brake that was squealing a little bit on the last ride. Maybe put the light mount on. Maybe put the skewers on, but I kind of want to wait till I have an extra tool that I can keep with me on this bike. This thing's high enough I can almost get like a deeper one in. That could be interesting, actually, especially with Scout's little car seat thing, since it sits way up. Clip on the sides. I took some measurements. I might just take it with me. Go down to Tomcat, take some measurements off his large wall basket, and try and talk myself into spending $42 on a basket, which I don't want to do. Don't like it. Yikes. Yeah, used ones are all misshapen. God, maybe I should just do the new one. Ugh. I'm just going to ride down there and take a look at that new one, see if it'll even work before I do this. Okay, so I didn't like that basket. So I rode down to Tomcat Bikes to see if he had a fork for a different bike, which we'll do soon, but he didn't have anything that I really liked the way it fitted. And to see about the big new black baskets. And I didn't really like the way they fit. And the little Scout doggy thing didn't really fit well. I have to modify it. Like cut it down and do some weird stuff to make a little dog seat fit. And I kind of regretted selling the Soma Portour rack. Hey, Scout. So I went on the old Facebook Marketplace, and there's a bike for $50 with a free rack and basket. And it turns out it was the Soma Portour rack, but the newer version with the extra set of eyelets, so I can have extra stays going to clamp on the fork, which is something I didn't really like about the old one. It was just the dropouts and this little center thing, and this thing is actually horrifically heavy. I miss my custom racks. They are very light, like a third this weight. So this kind of sucks. It's probably just as heavy as the other big rack. But it's got the pannier bars, so you can do little small panniers on the front. It's got these extra little dudes. And I think the basket's bigger, and if not, I don't mind modifying Scout's little thing for something cooler. So we are considering putting this guy on. That looks pretty alright. That looks pretty alright. I didn't really like the idea of the Portour rack with a little L bracket going on the brake and the fender and the recess nut and blah blah blah. But with these extra guys, I think it might be alright. I think it's worth trying, even though it's heavy and stupid. The regular basket's way, way lighter. I don't really know why people like the rack hook to basket life. But whatever. It looks like it's got all the hardware. Make the extra stays work. I have some extra P-clamps I can use around the fork blades, which, again, I don't like. And if I was still doing this custom for myself, I'd probably just build a whole new fork and put the right braze-ons on and make a custom rack and be all light and nice and blah, blah, blah. Maybe someday I'll do that to replace this bike. Maybe someday I'll get back into frame building and build a custom frame. Because one of the big reasons why I got into frame building in the first place is I hate geometry of road bikes. I also hate mountain bikes. I hate everything. But I would sure love, I ride my own seat tubes back like 71, 72 degrees, or most bikes are like 73, 74. So I like to sit back like 2 more inches, which is nice. Not unheard of. Greg LeMond, he was a real famous road racer, and he rode like 68-degree seat tubes and like 70-centimeter top tubes because he had a crazy big body and he was still fast as heck. So, you know, like whatever forever, man. And this old nothing special Schwinn needs to live on, and buying a new basket for 40 bucks seemed special. But buying a used rack with a crappy basket, zip tied on and hose clamped on for 50 bucks with a whole commuter bike, which you probably can't see, this little Bianchi. 50 bucks, that seems great. So I'm gonna do a little tune up that Bianchi. I'll try and flip it for 100 bucks, and I'd probably get 100 bucks for it. Maybe 150. We'll see. It's little, it's commutery. So the first step is I'm going to try and get the little L bracket off of that Bianchi and see if we can make it fit with this, with all this ridiculous amount of stuff, and probably find a slightly longer recessed brake nut just to be safe. Because I want to start riding this nothing special Schwinn again real bad. I rode the Alloy Scout bike Trek the other day, and you know, the bike just doesn't fit right. It makes my hands hurt. Well, riding this around for a bunch of miles did not make my hands hurt. It's gonna make my butt hurt. But either gonna break my butt into this cool little turbo, or I'm gonna change this turbo to something ugly and stupid that doesn't suck. You can see this is the little $50 commuter. The wheels seem round and true. The brakes don't seem worn out. So 50 bucks for good set of Shimano wheels is totally fine. It's got some expensive pit lock skewers on it. I'll probably sell because I hate them. And I think this bike just didn't fit her very much. She's got way too much seat post showing. Cuckoo. So this is the Soma mounting bracket. It's just a kind of a thick stainless steel guide designed to kind of go up over your brakes, hopefully, and come out and have a real long area. It's got 3 bolts. You can move it around and bolt it down to the rack wherever. Let's put it right in the way. First thing I'm going to do is pop out this recessed brake nut, and we'll see how many threads it has, because I want to have at least enough to cover that extra rack thickness. So it has a big, fat, cool head and a washer, which I like, but you can see, covered in dog hair, it is pretty short. I'm going to find a longer one. Here is a bunch of these extra P-clamps I've been hoarding. So hopefully I'll have a set of these that are about the right size, like maybe these ones, to go around the fork blade and pinch to that rack. I know it's ugly and dumb, but the extra safety is going to be good, especially I have my dog in this, so I want it to be safe. So I got lots of these on other brakes, but I have one just floating around, and you can see it's tall enough to make up that space. Just a few mils, probably exactly what we need. It's a shame you're so pretty. In theory, this is just going to go on, slide the brake out without dropping all the hardware and the fender hardware and all the stuff, hook this guy on, slide it all back in, sort of pinching the fender, the little spacer. Hey, look at that, I pinch it in, it's not even hitting the headset, it's clearing everything. Alright, now getting a recessed brake nut started is usually a pain. I get the brake order just right. Oh, nah, never mind, it went right on. Usually it's a nightmare. You gotta make sure it's got lots of threads, and it feels like it's got 4 or 5. So I got lots of threads on that brake bolt, and it doesn't bottom out on itself, so the brake doesn't, it's not like tight back here, the brake's still wiggling, which would mean that it was too long or something else going on. No buenos. Get that centered, get this brake about centered, squeeze the brake lever, try and center it. Fender's still centered. This is why this kind of sucks, because you end up with a fender you want to straight, this bracket you want to have straight, and the brake you want to have centered, all on one old brake bolt. But this is kind of working out. Holding that brake lever to try and keep the brake straight. And we just want this back recessed brake nut to tighten up without it moving the fender and the brake and the rack and everything else and being a nightmare and just fighting it all the time because nothing will stay straight. Every time you turn it, all this tension on the bolt just yanks everything wherever it wants to go. And sometimes that is the case, and sometimes not so much. The brake's definitely not straight. It's got wrench flats for straightening tool, but with this rack staying in the way, that ain't gonna happen. So we gotta figure out a different way. The brake's maybe not perfectly centered, pretty close. I'm gonna hold it out, see if that helps at all. Tightening this bolt some more. And it's pretty tight. It's still not centered. And not in our favor, but you know, maybe it'll work. We also want to tow this pad in a little bit. It was squealing on the ride. And I managed to tow this pad in just on the ride with like a little multi-tool, but this side I couldn't move. When I pop this wheel out, I'm going to tow that in just a little bit. Hope that solves it. Another thing about these brakes is that they're cool, the original ones. They seem to stop fine, but if they suck, I got some other like modern dual pivots. So here's just some like silver, maybe small to medium reach. They look like they'll work just fine. Just no logos, no names, just cheap whatever, which usually wears out fast and is annoying. These have very little miles on them, any play or slop. They have good pad holders. Just put new pads in. You can see instead of just pivoting on the center bolt, they pivot on 2 bolts, which actually makes them a lot stoppier usually. So if those brakes suck and are annoying, and I can't get the pads adjusted right, and I want to really freak out, I might put these cheapo generic silver brakes on. Well, the problem is sometimes they hang down a lot more in the middle and steal some of your fender clearance. But these look like they'll still clear. So maybe I'll do this video. Maybe not. We'll see. Oh, and I definitely need to adjust that brake. Wheel is out. On these old style brake pads that really have no toe in and no toe in on the pads and blah blah blah. People will tell you not to do it. I've done it a million times. I've never had a problem or safety issue. I grab this brake arm with this big adjustable wrench and just try and tweak it a little teeny bit. Manually adjusting it. You really shouldn't bend aluminum. You definitely shouldn't bend it 4 or 5 or 6 times, but just bend it in once. We shall see. Let's hold this big jerk up. Kinda looks like it'll work. Sure is a lot of nonsense for a quick release wheel. I really like these better with track wheels, but I don't want to put track front hub on this. There's no reason not to, but I don't want to. So I guess what I'm going to do is gently thread a couple of bolts into here to hold this in place and try and get the wheel back in. See what comes of that. Now this is also going to be, well, I'd say hard to bolt on with this fender in the way, but there's enough clearance. We might be alright. I grabbed some pretty short bolts because I feel like these don't go all the way through. Yeah, see, it's already bottoming out. There's way too much room. So you need really short bolts. These thread bosses are just like setting on the tube. There's not like a hole drilled into the tube. So I need to take off at least 2 or 3 millimeters off these guys, which are already kind of the shortest common size. It's good to have lots of hardware for situations just like this, because this guy is short, but it's too long. Found these 3 little guys, which are just, my hand is not flat enough for this, just a little bit shorter. And then I've also got some super short bros, which are great for the bottom side of things like bottom brackets and really short things where it could bottom out. But I think this is going to be too short to fit safely through this thick stainless rack and into those braze-ons. It'd be like just right, but I want a washer. So let's try these 3 matching, just kind of shorter guys. The thick washer first and hope they don't bottom out. So a little M5 washer. That's what most bike bolts are, is M5 by 0.08 thread pitch. So M5 is, that's 5 millimeters metric, so metric 5. 0.8 is the threads, how close they are to each other. And then the length is different. So or M5 by 0.08 by 8 millimeters long, 10 millimeters long, 20 millimeters long, and 60 millimeters long. The other less common but bigger size for racks and brakes and some old brazons and stuff is the M6 by 1 thread. It's good to have a little selection of both, especially longer stuff, the M6. I'm going to go with some big fatter ones too to really slide around. Try to do this easiest one right up front with the most room under the fender first. Let's see how it fits. What I want is to be able to get this bolt tight and not have the rack be all loosey-goosey and moving. So the bolt is tight, and the rack isn't flopping, so I think it's not bolted bottoming out. I think it should be fine. I'm going to need a specialty tool. So this is my regular Allen wrench. This is my specialty guy. You can see it's super short and stubby, so I get into way tighter spaces, which is good because this fender is really in the way. And by really in the way, I mean there's definitely like more than an inch of clearance, so it's actually wonderful. I've definitely done this where you have to bolt the rack right to the fender, which is a little easier because you can drill a hole in the fender. Or it's only a few millimeters of clearance, then you're really going, go in your home. There we go. Yeah. That got her tighter. All right, let's do the other two. I mean, 2 is probably more than enough, but you know, no kind of kill like overkill. The way torque works, I sort of tighten these all down at once. Get this back one tight, might make that loose one the front one loose again. So we're going to go through and double check everything. A little bit of movement. All right, these jerks are on. This has little feet and they're adjustable. You got bolts on them too, and lots of holes so you can move it up or down a little bit. Probably outside these fork blades, kind of in place. And we're going to see if we can get this front wheel on and off. I've also, I really need to switch the tire around on this wheel. Should I just put the wheel in backwards with a lazy piece of shit? Read exarge from the back. So everything's right about this except for this tire is on the wrong side. It is not pro. It doesn't need to be fixed. Tread really doesn't matter. It's just not pro. And I'm going to fix it even though I don't want to. My hands are pretty clean. Touch these old gum walls. Be fine. Why? Why can't I just put tires on right the first time? Alright, air's out of the tire. Come on, man. Wait, are you sticking to the tube? Wait, sticking to stuff. There we go. Flipping it around. Exarch to the back. Logos to the drive side. Probably clean these rims. Now I got my greasy fingers all over them. This tire's a little tight on this rim, so I'm going to use my handy dandy bead jack. Sort of make sure everything else is set in there in the inside of the rim, not up in the bead. Get it loose as possible. And put the jack on the other side of the rim. Hook the tire. Usually I have to do little smaller sections, a couple inches. Boom! Bead jacked. I'm going to go around and make sure I didn't pinch the tube anywhere. I don't see the tube. All I want to see is rim tape and sidewall. So I don't pinch the tube when I pump it up. Always yank this up and down a few times. Make sure everything's cool when it's pumped up. The valve's a little, extra bulk in there, and it really likes to stick and pinch that tube right by the valve. No idea what I'm running these at. Only 28s. I'm gonna say minimum at 80. I should probably be running at like 100. No, man. What? No. Why? Why? Well, this tube just decided to give up the ghost for some reason. Sometimes these valves have a removable core and they'll come loose and they'll leak. And you put a little adjustable wrench on and tighten them. This one doesn't. I don't know what's going on. So let's punish ourselves and pump me up again. It's still a problem. Because these are very old tubes. Probably put on with these tires 5 or 10 years ago. And if this sucks, I definitely have a lot of spare tubes. Because now that tubes are over $10. New tubes time. Jerk. It's a good thing I just did this. I could do it all over again. Come on, let go. Ugh. Also, it's a good thing to get this out of the way now instead of on the side of the road somewhere. Let's see if I did anything stupid like tore the tube and gave myself a pinch flat, or it's just the valve failing. Oh, yeah. This old tube tore, gave up the ghost down here by the seam, so I didn't pinch it, it just didn't like the 100 psi. Here's a good newer tube. I just pulled off of some other donor wheel. It's got a longer valve stem, which I like. People like running the shortest valve stems possible. I don't know why. The long ones are kind of make life a lot easier. I'll take this other matching tube. I was going to use these for a different wheel set for a different project. I'll take it and I'll put a little trunk bag on this bike with a tire lever and a tube. Got the frame pump on there, and I have all the stuff to fix the flat when I'm out riding around. Use the sweet bead jack again. Of course, I'm doing it by the valve where there's less room. It's really stupid. I usually do the other side of the tire. But here is where we find ourselves. Use my thumb to help a little too. Get in. Use my palm. Double check in. Looking every time. Make sure the tube's not poking in between the rim tape and the rim and the tire. I really do like these wheels. They're like silver Shimano Exarge 7-speed hubs, so nothing fancy, nothing desirable, nothing no one paid money for, but all original, crazy low miles. Is really nice, probably middling Matrix Titan Tech, hard anno rims will have like no miles on them. I bought an entire 47 centimeter early 90s Trek 1200, with all Exarge and RX100 parts no one cares about, with crazy low miles for $100. Really, just because I wanted these wheels. And it had these brand new Paselas on it. And I don't regret it at all. And I sold the rest of the parts. I think I got like $30 for the shifters and probably 30 or 40 for the cranks. And sold at least the rear derailleur for probably $20. Man, I might have sold the front derailleur for 10 or 15 bucks, or maybe it's still sitting around. So I almost got my money back, and really scored on these wheels and tires no one cares about. Okay, now that I set that brake in, it's a little tight. Up and over, babies. This should probably really only be done with a bolt-on axle, lots of extra threads. But, sure, a million guys have done this and it's been totally fine. In the worst case, I could go find another axle with the same amount of... Oh, that's right, this fork's a little 2 millimeters too tight. This is an extra pain in the butt. This is all kinds of sketch-tastic. So I'm using my knee to really push the wheel all the way up and hopefully straight. So So I might go see if I can find a longer threaded 9mm axle and put it in here and have it stick out, so you have to use this rack. Or I could get a nutted one and use nuts. Now I can keep this wheel and keep things matching and cool. Or we'll just try it and see what a horrific death trap this really is. I think with a lot of modern forks, they have the lawyer lips on the bottom. And this rack will probably sit right on those lawyer lips. Oftentimes I flip this little fork drop out on the rack upside down and just have the hole sticking out and bolt it through the front eyelet. But I don't have a front eyelet. And you're rubbing because you're not straight. It's a good test of straightness. Yeah, so this will really suck on the side of a road without a stand. For sure. Are you hitting the fender? The fender slipped down when we adjusted the brake. So I'm going to loosen this brake up again. We're going to try and move the whole brake center on the wheel. We're going to slide the fender up at the same time. Okay, it's loosey-goosey. Fender's all the way up. Brake's all the way over. Let's see what happens now. And get it all the way tight. Let's just make sure this is going to cut it. Now that I told the other brake in, the whole thing's too tight. We got lots of barrel adjuster room. So I always leave ourselves some barrel adjuster room. Kind of make up for it. Rolled that thing all the way in, and it's still tighter than the back. And it looks centered because I held it all the way over to the right. When I try to turn the bolts, trying to yank it over the other way. So I held it all the way over, maybe yanked it a little bit, and I still won with it being centered. Huh. The wheel looks straight. But this little fork thing's almost touching this fork blade. And over here, there's like a bunch of gap. We're going to try this again. Make sure that's in. Oh, now that's loose. Where that extra... Oh, clicker's still up. There we go. There you have it, my very slightly sketchy wheel. Worst case, I'll be riding around hard and I stand on the bars and maybe this wheel will slip. Start rubbing the fender of the brake and I'll pull over to the side. Hopefully not explode. Catastrophically fail, make me go flying over the handlebars, but we'll do some test rides. We'll go buy some groceries a few times before everything got let the dog in. But yeah, these 3 bolts are tight. The brake bolt's tight. This thing's tight. Yeah, getting a front track axle would probably be ideal. That's something I could probably order for $5 or $10 or go find an old hub somewhere. For the extra stability and support. I clean that rim too if I remember. Use an old toe strap, which you always have a few of from old junk bike projects and whatnot. So what we got in this kit is 2 stays. So we got a little cup and a little cone, basically. The stay goes through that, and the cup tightens into it, and you can see it. The hole the stay goes through, the cup goes up into it a little bit, and will tighten up against the stay. Show it again with the stay. So stay goes through this eye bolt, and this cup tightens, and now the stay can't move. Pretty clever. And put them on the inside, so it'll be all the way to the pannier for one. And that bolt won't probably rub holes in it. But also that brings this stay the closest possible to the fork blade. And I don't have good rack making benders anymore. I do some cheap car benders for car tubing, and this is probably cheap shitty tubing, and that would probably be fine. That bolt is not long enough. God, I do want slightly longer bolts, probably for both of these. In every bike company in the world, we buy racks or fenders because you just tons of hardware. It's usually cheap and terrible and will strip out, or it's all way too long or all way too short. Like, I don't know what they're thinking. So when I owned a shop, I had every size of these, and a lot of shops will have 10 millimeters and 16 millimeters and 20, but they make them in every size. So I had 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. I don't have that. I just have random junk hardware, but I found a nice matching set that's just another 2 or 3 threads long, and it's already had like 2. So it's like 6 or 7 threads. It's a lot more safe. because you go to over tighten this soft aluminum stuff, you'll just tear the threads right out. Trying to over tighten it if you don't have a good grip. It's the same with cranks. People always complain they tear the threads out of their crank bolts. And I'm like, but you gotta put that tool all the way in. All the way, not just till your finger stops. Put a tool on it, it'll go like 2-3 more turns, and then cinch it down just a little bit. Otherwise, those threads are gonna pull right out of that soft aluminum long before you break a nice hard taper. Same thing with this one. Placing it with this nice matchy, slightly longer one. Hardware is key, man. You go to swap meets or wherever, and people have bags of random old hardware. Old shops have bags of random old hardware. Just grab that shit up. Let's see if this clamp will be all the right thing. So I got these rubber P or R clamps. I'm gonna go around the fork. That fits right around the fork blade. Get this stay rolled right up to it. And then we're gonna smush it all down with the bolt all ugly and willy-nilly. Sometimes you make these things pretty, and sometimes you can't. I feel like this might be one of those you can't really do at times. So I found a couple more bolts. They even match the ones I just used in that clamp-on hardware. I got 4 little washers, got some nuts. You don't have to make all your hardware match, but it's a lot cooler if you do. Put washers underneath everything. Guys skip that all the time, but it's a lot cooler if you do. Things won't bind, you get accurate torques, things will actually tighten down instead of just strip or bind. Make you think it's tight and come loose later, so it wasn't actually tight, it was just all bound up. These R clips, once you try and smush them on stuff, never actually line up quite right. And there's a big gap in here, and I could just force it all. You know, I might go with longer bolts and little spacers. Yeah. And when in doubt on spacers, sometimes these little Presta valve jam nuts work great. Load 2 of these bad boys up. This is going to be a pain. If you want the bolt to be way too long, it's a little easier, but I don't want it to be way too long. So without it being all smushed down, the bolt is like exactly the right size, and they're really hard to start these threads. I'm going to push from this side, try and hold it with my fingers over here, and maybe you can get them to start, and not just cross thread or fall off. Oh, I think we did. Now I can grab it with this cute little 8. Beautiful. Same thing on the other side. See if we can mash or jam. Okay, that's just a little below the W. That's up on the W. See if I can scooch it just for my own craziness, making these things even as possible. Well, it's pretty close. I got 2 kind of crappy, 2 more kind of crappy, and 1 mediocre mounting point, so that's better than 3 crappy ones, like most things. 5 crappy ones. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Oh, look, this rack isn't very even. So I just took the Nothing Special Schwinn out for a test ride to go get some hardware for this broken seat post. And it did pretty well. The cable and housing was a little draggy up here under here and added some tension to the rear derailleur. It took tension off, so it was making it shift down really well, but up really bad. So I just rolled the barrel adjuster out a few times as I was riding and adjusted the tension, and it came out great. Also added this little bell before I left. The rack didn't seem to slip or move or give me a hard time at all. It actually sits pretty level and nice, like maybe it'll grow on me. It didn't ride bad, didn't feel heavy. I got complimented on it by our roadie and all spandex, the brand new carbon bike. But what a nice, clean looking old steel bike this was. So that was a great time. No flat in the back, even though I thought I might. I still want to make a mud flap for the back of this. I haven't even showed you guys that yet. I got a really cool cutting board. I cut into a really ridiculous mud flap. The seat still creaks and I think it's trying to wander back still. I have to grease the bolt or something to get it a little tighter. Hopefully I don't break it like it broke this other one. But yeah, it did great. I really liked it. I mean, those tires are way skinnier and way harder. Gotta pay a tiny bit more attention, but I just like the way it rides so much better. You know, it just feels faster and more nimble and more comfortable. My hands don't hurt. The brake didn't squeal at all, so adjusting it was great. I might mess around with this little bag a little bit more. I gotta cut a little new platform that's smaller for Scout to stand on and feel firm. And it's got this thing, and it'll be great. It's got little side pockets, stick my tubes in, and front pockets, stick my tools in. So the bag will be good. Yeah, the bike does feel lighter and more nimble and nicer, and I'm into it. It really did shift so bad. As soon as I got up my first hill, it wouldn't shift in the biggest ring, and the chain just popped off on the front. So to stop, pull over, and put the chain back on. So that was a little silly, but otherwise, great. So yeah, good test ride. I found some little carabiners and strapped the basket in a little bit better up over the top. It's not sagging as much. The Nothing Special Schwinn is basically done, except I want to add a light mount to this rack. I do it kind of like I do with the other bike. One of these Originate little light mounts. And the other bike, I drilled a hole in the basket stay and just bolted it right on. Can't really do that with this bike. So I was trying to think, like, what can I use to mount this? I'm looking around, trying to figure some stuff out. And you know what I think I'm going to do, and I've definitely done before, is take an old brake part, like this brake arm, and we can drill this little D-ring out solid. And this rack's got some little thread eyelets. We can bolt this guy on here, cut the rest of this arm off. Let's have a nice little swoopy arm to plop this little light mount in. And I think I might even do it on the inside. Bring it in this way just to make the light a little more hidden and subtle. Less likely to get bashed and broken off, less likely to get stolen if I forget it at a bike rack. Yeah, look at this. This is like a bag of hardware I got at a swap meet for like $1. That's a million brake bolts, little brake washers and spacers and little half-round washers for their forks and little recessed brake nuts and yeah, some random brake arms. And this is the good stuff. People are just throwing this away. This had too much. It's crazy. It seems like you have too much if you have a bunch, but if you don't have any, you're totally boned half the time when you're trying to do anything on a bike. So let's do that real quick. So, you know, I don't really need anything below this little bolt. Luckily there's plenty of room in here. And I've had a little bench grinder. I'd grind this all up and make it nicer, but I don't. So I don't even have a good file, a good heavy-duty solid one, so I might hacksaw a little bit more of this off before I start filing it. Here's a file. So let's get a little rounder. It's still kind of Uggs. This big lip we really do not need. If I had a coarser file, this would go a little faster. But here we are. Sort of rounding it to kind of match the stock shape of the arm. Make it look like it was made this way on purpose. Keeping the file moving so we can get weird flat spots and high spots. Wrapping some sandpaper around it. Made a nice hole in the sandpaper. Moving to a different spot. You know, just a few minutes. I could really use a few more minutes. If I had a power grinder or something, you could really mess with it a little bit, make it perfect. Not so chonk. But it's pretty subtles. I still need to make this hole big enough for an actual bolt to go through. This is that free drill and bits that I got at that off Craigslist a little while ago. The guy selling the fork straightening park tool. See if I can not break my arm with this. Beautiful. Same thing, sandpaper, taking off any burrs. We want to get a little metal splinter or have a burr keep our bolt from tightening down enough, coming loose. Heck yeah. Little light mount arm. So I got this old Blaze battery powered light in a free box the other day or in a pile of junk. It's probably not the light I'll use, but it is huge. Anything I do use will definitely be smaller. So if we set it up for this, we'll probably be in good shape for whatever we actually use. We'll mount this guy on there. Mount this guy in like this. And like this. Pretty subtle, but pretty upfront. Ooh, that doesn't like that. I have to go this way, I think. So the stock bolt that comes with a light mount is just a little bit too short. So I found one a little bit longer. Drop it in. Oh, having bad luck. Everything's like way too long or way too short. So it's way too long. It sticks out a little bit. Let's get a nut and a washer on. It's only 3 or 4 threads. It's not too terrible much. I'm going to cheat a little bit by just sticking a few extra washers and lock washers and things on. So it'll be hidden on the inside and won't bother me. Adding a little washer. Adding a brand new nylock nut. You're really not supposed to use these nylock nuts. They're a little nylon insert. You're not supposed to reuse them because the nylon gets cut and it's like not as good. I often reuse them and I've never had a problem, but I try not to. And that's perfect. You want like one thread poking through the nylock. That's technically the ideal way of doing it. So this guy looks pretty good. Now we gotta bolt this guy up and on. See if we can make that work. Just got a bolt that think's long enough. Try and come in from the back side. Hope everything clears. We'll see. Hope these threads are clean and clear. If not, I have taps. It's M5 by 0.08, like we said before. So a regular old tap will clean these threads out really well. If they're just too full of rust and goobers and junk, which it's kind of looking like they may be. Let's try it from the front and see. Sometimes it's a nice old hard bolt going through. Something's a little dirty, we'll just clean it out just as good as a tap. Yeah, this bolt's fine. Doesn't need a tap. Just run this through a little teeny bit. And sometimes when things are being weird, you just need to get down and use your eyeballs. Really look and see there's something else going on. God, it looks like it might just clear. Nope. It hits the rack. It really wants to be on the outside. That's okay with me. The brake's got like a natural little pivoty dooter in it. It'll look cool on the outside too. It's more subtle on the inside. Either that or I'd have to file a little relief on this light mount. Just shave some off so it can slide all the way up under this rack, but that seems silly at this point. Put a washer on, and this bolt is technically long enough. I ought to be able to get another nylock on this side. I don't know if it'll actually fit. It looks like it's fitting. Luckily this light mount's right in the way for me to get the wrench on here very well. The tube's in the way on the top. Slow, obnoxious going. That sounds just like bikes. Woohoo! And would you look at that? If this was a little bit longer, it'd be nicer. It'd be easier to push this button on the top, but still do it, kinda. And like I said, this is a real big boy of a light. The actual USB thing I'm going to be using is a little smaller, should be a lot easier. So here's the finished light mount. Pretty cool, just enough clearance for my finger in there to turn it on. Looks like from this side, might be a little tricky to use a pannier. But I probably never will. You can see the finished rack mounts from this angle as well. The little pinchy tubes, little R clamps. See this sketchily sit over the axle? Not enough threads poking out of this. I might actually and try and find a 120 or a 126 spaced rear skewer, like a narrow rear skewer, and run that in the front. I've done that for weird stuff before. Because these stock ones are 100, so 120 just be an extra 10 millimeters would be pretty tight. So that is it for the old nothing special Schwinn. Rack and basket are on, light mounts on, dog bags in. I'll go buy something heavy tomorrow. Ride around in this, make sure it doesn't slip. I'll definitely dig around and see if maybe I have a longer quick release skewer that'll work. In the meantime, maybe I'll make it a threaded in, bolted on axle at some point. Or maybe I'll just move this whole thing and bolt it to this fender eyelet with the fenders. It'd be real awkward and weird. With like a metal fender, I don't mind so much. These big plastic fender eyelets, I can't really get them as tight as I want. But usually when I do that, I use the eyelets, I'll use an extra long bolt and use a lock nut on the back too, so it doesn't have to be crazy tight because the lock nut can hold it in. It won't wiggle and move and come loose. But anyways, thanks for watching.